Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 221. Storm of Vengeance. In the world of Ethereal, Ethan had just finished killing his 50th soul render. As expected, a new system notification popped up. Ding! System notification. The nurturing of the prismatic stone. Phase 3 progress. Kill 0/500 soulseekers. The sheer number of kills required made Ethan's jaw drop. At his current pace, it had taken him 10 hours to kill 50 monsters. 500 would take 100 hours, but the quest timer only allowed 72. With just 58 hours left, he wasn't sure he could finish in time, and who knew if there would be a Phase 4 after this. But he had no choice. He had to push through. Even if he wanted to quit, he couldn't. His teleportation stone was grayed out, unusable. Checking his experience bar, he saw he was at level 41, 94% progress. The only silver lining was that the monsters here gave an insane amount of experience. Killing one of them was equivalent to wiping out an entire group of mobs in the life greenhouse. Well, might as well treat this as a grind for levels, Ethan muttered to himself. But when he saw the soulseekers, his heart sank. These monsters were tiny, floating eyeballs that drifted aimlessly across the map. They had almost no attack power. A single instant-cast moonfire from Ethan was enough to kill them. The problem was finding them. They gave no experience and no loot, making the hunt feel like a waste of time. After 7 or 8 frustrating hours of running around the map, Ethan finally found the last soulseeker in a hidden cave. Ding! System notification. The nurturing of the prismatic stone. Phase 4 progress. Kill 0/5000 blaze wraiths. When Ethan saw the number required for Phase 4, he almost lost it. But then he noticed the monster's name, Blaze Wraiths. He remembered seeing them during his earlier map exploration. They were fire elemental creatures, and there were endless swarms of them in one area. With around 20,000 HP each, killing 5,000 of them would still be a grind, but at least they were clustered together. With his 2 AoE skills, Ethan wasn't too worried about these low-health, group-oriented mobs. As Ethan settled into the endless grind, the southern frontier region was also in chaos. A player named West Gatelord had held the Divine Ability Scroll for 11 hours and 45 minutes. Ethan had assumed he would be the final winner, but at the last moment he was killed, and the timer reset. The battle in the southern frontier was intense, and the northern frontier wasn't idle either. Over the past 2 days, Skyblade and Slashblade had stopped running dungeons entirely, focusing all their efforts on attacking Blade Syndicate. Whether it was in open-world leveling zones or outside dungeon entrances, Renegade Alliance had stationed players everywhere. They didn't care about going red-named, they attacked on sight. Anyone who turned red would rotate out, and the next wave would take over. Zachary hadn't expected that after the guild's recent turmoil, Renegade Alliance would become even more united, with everyone quietly determined to prove themselves. Marcus Skaner, on the other hand, was once again finding himself on the losing end of his collaboration with Zachary. During the battle in Larson Basin, he'd been crippled by just 5 members of Renegade Alliance. Then, during the town conquest, a demigod-tier monster had wiped out his entire team. After that, he'd been ambushed and slaughtered in the canyon of Reedridge Town. Bitter and vengeful, Marcus had accepted Zachary's offer to poach members from Renegade Alliance. Not only had Marcus failed to poach many members, but he was also being relentlessly hunted. Even his contact, Reaper X, had been killed so many times that he was sent back to the starter zone. The 4 guild leaders who had left Renegade Alliance hadn't joined him either. So far, only about 40 elite members from Renegade Alliance had defected to his side. This recruitment effort was supposed to be paid per head, but with such a small and underwhelming group, how much could he really earn? Frustrated, Marcus vented his anger on the monsters in the leveling zone. Wielding a single blade in his right hand and a shield in his left, He swung wildly, his movements fierce but unfocused. When he checked his damage output, it was less than 250 DPS. Feeling utterly defeated, Marcus stopped attacking. This is another disaster. I just hope Renegade Alliance's rage blows over soon. For the first time, he understood the pain and frustration of the smaller guilds and players that Blade Syndicate had harassed and hunted in the past. As Marcus prepared to sit down and soak up some experience, chaos erupted in the leveling zone his 300-man army had claimed. The formation broke, and the players began to scatter in confusion. Marcus was startled. What's happening? Above them, dark clouds of magic began to gather, looming ominously over the battlefield. The sheer pressure of the spell caused panic among the Blade Syndicate players. What the hell? Who's casting a large-scale magic spell? It's the advanced warlock skill, Apocalypse. Holy crap! It's Meatball from Renegade Alliance. Someone interrupt him. But the Blade Syndicate players were too busy scrambling to escape the spell's area of effect to even think about interrupting. Meanwhile, a group of about 20 players from Renegade Alliance charged into the fray from the outskirts of the Blade Syndicate camp. Leading the charge were Skyblade and Seraph Warrior. Skyblade was like a raging tiger, crashing into a group of 7 or 8 Blade Syndicate players with his charge ability. Seraph Warrior, a hidden class Judicator of Light, followed closely behind. Suddenly, he whistled, and a warhorse materialized beneath him, lifting him into the air. The Blade Syndicate players stared in shock as Seraph Warrior rode straight into their ranks. 3 seconds later, the warhorse vanished, and he raised his great sword to the sky. A golden whirlwind erupted around him, sending a dozen players flying. "Damn, show off," Skyblade muttered, watching Seraph Warrior's flashy move. Behind them, Slashblade and the others surged forward, carving a path through the enemy. The Blade Syndicate forces parted like water, unable to hold their ground. "Follow me left. Marcus is over there," Skyblade shouted, having spotted Marcus's location. The Blade Syndicate players began to retaliate. Despite the initial charge taking out dozens of them, this was still a 300-man elite force, Marcus's personal army, the cream of Blade Syndicate. "Meatball, how much longer on that damn spell?" Skyblade yelled as a barrage of spells, arrows, and bullets rained down on him. The individual hits were small, around 100 damage each, but the sheer volume was overwhelming. Slashblade and 5 healers worked frantically to keep the team alive, while Seraph Warrior used his holy energy to heal Skyblade. "Almost there. Hold on for 2 more minutes," Meatball shouted in the party chat. Seraph Warrior noticed Marcus trying to retreat. "He's running. Leo, speed up and close the gap," Slashblade suddenly called out. Trusting Slashblade's judgment, Skyblade didn't hesitate. He surged forward, clearing the way with his rapid strike. Holy chains! When they were about 150 meters from Marcus's retreating forces, Slashblade began to chant. Chapter 222, Curse of the Apocalypse. A milky white chain materialized around Slashblade, coiling like a serpent. At the same time, a glowing white orb formed at the tip of his staff, resembling the harmless radiant illumination spell. With a flick of his wrist, he launched the orb toward Marcus Skaner. The projectile flew at incredible speed, tracing a perfect arc through the air before striking Marcus. Instantly, chains identical to those around Slashblade wrapped around Marcus's body. Ding! System notification. You have been bound by holy chains. You cannot move more than 150 meters away from the caster. All teleportation skills and items are disabled. The effect will only be lifted upon the death of one party. Marcus, who had been organizing his troops for a counterattack, froze at the notification. What kind of skill is this? He had never heard of it before. Holy Chains was an exceptionally rare skill for the priest class. Even in the late game, very few priests ever learned it. The skill locked down all of the target's teleportation abilities and items, including teleportation stones, and restricted their movement to a 150-meter radius around the caster. Once cast, even the priest couldn't undo the effect, It would only disappear when one of the two parties died. The problem was, priests were healers with almost no offensive capabilities. If a priest used this skill, there was a 99% chance they'd be the ones to die. Additionally, the skill's targeting orb would bind the first enemy it touched, making it nearly impossible to aim accurately in large-scale battles. But Slashblade wasn't just any priest. In real life, he was a top-tier sniper. For him, the skill's limitations were trivial. He could calculate trajectories and hit moving targets with pinpoint accuracy. The fact that the skill's visual effect resembled radiant illumination, a harmless spell that most players ignored unless they were stealthed, made it even easier for him to land the shot. Marcus, who had been watching Slashblade cast the spell, hadn't thought much of it when he saw the glowing orb. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Rear guard, switch to the front. Fall back into Meatball's spell radius, Slashblade shouted. The 29 members of Renegade Alliance immediately halted their advance and turned around, charging back toward the dark green magic clouds of Apocalypse. Marcus, who had just escaped the spell's area of effect, suddenly felt his body stiffen. It was as if an invisible rope had yanked him backward, pulling him back toward the deadly magic. Holy Chains had one small mercy for the caster. It allowed them to forcibly drag their target within the 150-meter range. "Kill that warlock," Marcus yelled, his body moving against his will as he was pulled back into the Apocalypse zone. Taking down Slashblade was impossible. He was surrounded by over 20 elite players. The only option was to target Meatball and try to interrupt his spell. But Meatball had been standing on a hilltop for quite some time, and Marcus's troops had been too busy running to notice him. Marcus couldn't believe it. His own guild members were so clueless that without direct orders, they were completely useless. No one had even thought to interrupt Meatball's spell. Are they brain dead? He fumed. There were times when he seriously considered stepping down as guild leader. It was exhausting. He couldn't help but compare his situation to Renegade Alliance. Their guild leader was practically a ghost, rarely seen or heard from, yet everything ran smoothly. Meanwhile, Marcus was stuck micromanaging every little detail, constantly stressed and overworked. Why did I even want this position in the first place? He wondered, regretting his decision to fight for control of Blade Syndicate. When Marcus shouted for his guild to attack Meatball, the players finally sprang into action. They glanced at Marcus, then at Meatball standing on the distant hilltop, and charged en masse. 200 players surged forward, their momentum awe-inspiring. Meatball glanced at the approaching horde, a smirk playing on his lips. When the fastest players were about 50 meters away, 6 figures suddenly appeared beside him, 3 rogues and 3 druids. The moment they materialized, the leading Blade Syndicate players dropped dead, their bodies hitting the ground before they could react. What followed was a wave of ambushes. Small teams of druids and rogues, part of the enforcement squad Ethan had tasked Celia with assembling, emerged from the shadows. This highly mobile force consisted of 500 druids and 500 rogues, 1,000 players in total. For this operation, 100 of each had been stationed near Meatball, totaling 200 elite fighters. Their mission was simple: protect Meatball, so he could complete the casting of his newly acquired special skill, Apocalypse. Curse. In the first moments of the clash, Blade Syndicate lost over 50 players to the ambush. Apocalypse. Curse. Meatball raised his staff and brought it down with a decisive motion. Within the dark green magic clouds, countless bolts of lightning crackled. A pillar of violet-black energy descended from the sky. At that exact moment, Marcus, still bound by holy chains, was dragged into the spell's radius. Meanwhile, Slashblade and the rest of Renegade Alliance had already moved beyond the cloud's reach, emerging on the other side. Marcus looked up at the descending pillar of darkness and thought, "This is it." But he wasn't overly panicked. At worst, he'd lose a level. Even if he hadn't been pulled into the Apocalypse zone, he wouldn't have stood a chance against Renegade Alliance's elite team alone. Besides, all 4 of their top players were here. What puzzled him was why they had gone to such lengths to drag him into the spell's area. His question was answered almost immediately. Ding. System notification. You have been hit by Apocalypse. Curse. Random curse effect applied. All attributes reduced by 80%. All gains reduced by 80%. Cannot be dispelled. Duration, 15 days. Ding. System notification. You have been killed by Meatball. Your corpse has been destroyed. Level -1. Marcus's heart sank as he read the curse effect. The attribute reduction was bad enough. He could live with that since his guild members did most of the grinding for him anyway. But an 80% reduction to all gains? Did that include experience, gold, and loot? If so, he'd be effectively useless for the next 15 days. What kind of broken skill is this? He thought, horrified. And since when did Apocalypse have a curse effect? Standing in the graveyard, Marcus's mind was a whirlwind of confusion and frustration. Fall back, Meatball shouted. The members of Renegade Alliance disengaged from their opponents and scattered, leaving the remaining Blade Syndicate players standing in stunned silence. Chapter 223, Form Changes. The members of Renegade Alliance scattered after the battle, each using their teleportation stones to return to the city. Meatball, how'd it go? Someone in the team asked. Heh, Marcus Gainer got screwed this time. 2 curses triggered. Meatball replied with a sly grin. What kind of effects? Skyblade asked. All attributes reduced by 80%, all gains reduced by 80%, heh. And luckily, it's for the full duration. His skill was highly unpredictable. The number of curses, their effects, and even the duration were all random. But the most brutal part was that even if the target died, the curses wouldn't disappear after resurrection, and they couldn't be dispelled. 15 days? Damn, Meatball, that's brutal. That hidden class skill of yours is downright nasty. Someone in the team exclaimed. Nasty? Have you seen his skull face? That's the real horror show. Another chimed in. You guys, damn it. Meatball, still chuckling, was left speechless by the teasing. Slashblade and Skyblade exchanged amused glances. After thoroughly humiliating Marcus Gainer, the team's frustration had dissipated somewhat. What's the boss been up to? He's been offline for a while, Skyblade asked. No idea. His phone's not picking up either, Seraph Warrior replied. I even went and rang his doorbell, but no one answered, Slashblade added. The 3 exchanged looks, a shared suspicion forming in their eyes. They wondered if Ethan had left to find Lila. A subtle worry began to creep into their minds. In reality, Ethan had gone offline the moment he entered Soulforge Abyss. Normally, incoming calls would be routed into the game system, but even that had failed. Meanwhile, Ethan, still running and slaying monsters in Soulforge Abyss, was completely unaware of the situation. 2 days had passed. He'd only stepped out once to eat instant noodles and drink water twice. The rest of the time he'd been grinding in the game. Now he'd reached level 42. Phase 3 Progress 4. Defeat Blaze Wraiths. 4895/5000. Just a few more waves of monsters and he'd complete this phase. After hours of grinding, Ethan was starting to feel numb. Since Phase 3, which required killing 500 eyes, the monsters hadn't dropped anything. Fortunately, the Blaze Wraiths at least gave experience. They also dropped a material called Ember Particles. 10 Ember Particles could be combined into 1 primordial flame. If he remembered correctly, all crafting professions at higher levels required primordial flame, especially blacksmithing, for crafting and upgrading equipment. This was why Ethan hadn't upgraded the ring he'd looted from Shadowstrike yet. Outside, farming elemental particles required going to Elemental Plateau, a level 55 to 65 zone with a notoriously low drop rate. In the late game, Ember Particles would become extremely valuable. Here, the drop rate for Ember Particles was high, and in Ethan's eyes, they were as good as gold coins. In the future, Ethan planned to own not just potion shops and engineering stores, but also blacksmithing and tailoring shops, among others. Achieving a monopoly would be difficult, but even a decent market share would bring in a fortune. Every bit of income now was an investment in the future. After clearing another wave of Blaze Wraiths, Ethan rushed toward the next group. About 10 minutes later, Phase 3 Progress 4. Defeat Blaze Wraiths. 5,000/5000. The task was complete, but Ethan's relief was short-lived as another system notification popped up. Ding. System notification. Prismatic Stones Incubation. Phase 3 Progress 5. Defeat Death Essence. 0 to 1. Huh? This time it's just one monster. Is the task finally coming to an end? It was actually Death Essence, that level 59 elite monster he'd spotted earlier while exploring the map. Its massive, emerald green body resembled an elemental creature. Ethan opened the task description to check. Task description. Death Essence. Over countless eons, the trapped soul energy within Soulforge Abyss has coalesced into a malevolent entity, roaming the dark territories of the Abyss. No other hints were provided. Ethan relied on his memory to locate the area where Death Essence roamed. His advanced analysis skill could only reveal the attributes of creatures within 15 levels of his own. All he could see was the monster's health bar. Everything else was a series of question marks. Health. 590000/590000. Ethan felt a headache coming on. He had no idea what skills the creature possessed. How was he supposed to fight this? Suddenly he smacked his forehead. He hadn't even used the skills from his exclusive artifact yet. Also, one of the weapon's attributes mentioned that it altered his appearance when he transformed. Why was it that when he shifted into panther form, he still looked like a scruffy black kitten? None of his other forms had changed either. He opened the weapon panel and examined its attributes closely. He noticed a button next to the first attribute. Passive ability number 1. Equipping this weapon alters the appearance of all your transformations. Enable/disable. No wonder there was no change. He hadn't clicked the enable button. The moment he enabled it, Ethan's vision shifted, and a holographic interface appeared before him. There were several options, each showcasing different appearances for his forms. In the panther category there was a flaming lion, a fiery panther form that looked incredibly fierce. Another option was called Soul of the Panther Mother, a semi-transparent form with a starlight effect, resembling a saber-toothed tiger. This appearance was stunning. Ethan eventually chose Soul of the Panther Mother, red. For the bear form, he selected Gray Throat's Might White. This was a unique appearance among the bear forms. While other forms were variations of the standard four-legged bear, this one stood upright, resembling a mutated werewolf. With its muscular limbs and explosive upper body strength, Ethan instantly fell in love with it. Finally, a bear form that didn't make him feel like he should be catching fish in a river. For the travel form, the appearances were divided into 3 categories: aquatic, terrestrial, and aerial. For the aquatic form, he changed the seal into a dolphin. He left the terrestrial form unchanged because he realized that if he switched it to a sleek leopard, he wouldn't be able to carry passengers. So, he stuck with the original stag form even if it was less eye-catching. The aerial form was grayed out since flight hadn't been unlocked yet. After finalizing his choices, Ethan looked at himself. His panther form was now a breathtaking starlight panther. From now on, as soon as he transformed, everyone would know who he was, a unique appearance with flashy effects. When he ran, he'd leave behind a trail of shimmering starlight, like a streak of lightning. He wanted to stay low-key, but damn, did he also want to look cool. Decisions. In the end, Ethan gave up. Looking cool was a lifelong pursuit, and being flashy was the ultimate truth. In the northern frontier region, what did it matter if he was low-key or not? It seemed like half the people out there wanted him dead anyway. But so far, who had actually managed to take him down? Watching people try and fail to kill him was the best damn entertainment. Chapter 224. Edge of Survival. After finishing the transformation, Ethan turned his attention to the weapon's attributes. Passive ability number 7. Increases the range of all skills by 1.5 meters. He had already noticed this effect earlier. Originally, in his panther and bear forms, his attacks were melee range with a maximum reach of 1 meter. Now, his attacks had become mid to long range, allowing him to strike enemies up to 2.5 meters away. This gave him a lot more flexibility in combat. As the saying goes, an inch longer, an inch stronger. With the panther form's high-speed movement, he could now use skills from 2.5 meters away. Kiting melee enemies felt incredibly smooth. Even against ranged enemies he could strike first, avoiding the need to get too close and risk breaking stealth. Next, he examined dynamic ability number 1. Spirit Embodiment. Grants the skill, Spirit Embodiment. Summons 16 druidic spirits to aid you for 3 seconds. Each spirit casts spells and skills based on your current form. Ethan smacked his forehead. A skill with a 10-minute cooldown, and he hadn't used it even once. Having such a powerful ability felt unfamiliar, but it was a game-changer. The next 5 skills all had a 30-day cooldown. He decided to save them for emergencies. They were his trump cards for survival or turning the tide in a fight. He had too many enemies. Every guild in the Blackridge region probably wanted him dead. In the northern frontier, Zachary was aggressively investing in guilds, and it was only a matter of time before they clashed. Without a few aces up his sleeve, he'd be in trouble. Right now, his target was a level 59 elite monster, Death Essence. Engaging it in melee combat was out of the question. The level difference was too great, and all his melee attacks would likely result in miss. Ding! Global announcement. The holder of Divine Ability Scroll, Fatal Strike, Divine, Little Horn, is currently at coordinates 19875.5689.7.25985. Holding time 0 hours 00 minutes 0 seconds. If the holder maintains possession for 12 hours, they will gain permanent ownership of the scroll. Ethan glanced at the system notification. At first, he didn't pay much attention. There had been too many announcements about divine ability scrolls lately. But when he saw the name Little Horn, he knew this was it. The battle for the divine ability was about to end. In his past life, Little Horn had been the one to obtain the Fatal Strike ability. The timeline in Northern Frontier had changed because of him, but other regions remained unaffected. If things played out as they had before, Little Horn was about to become a legendary figure. Ethan had met Little Horn twice in his past life. He was a decent guy. Shifting his focus back to the Death Essence, Ethan transformed into his owl form and immediately cast 2 debuffs on the monster. He followed up with alternating casts of Solar Flare and Lunar Beam. -495. -589. The level difference was still a problem. The owl form didn't have any defense-ignoring bonuses. Even with passive ability number 4 on his artifact, in owl form, after casting a lunar or solar spell, the next spell of the opposite type deals 50% increased damage. His attacks were still only dealing 3-digit damage. The Death Essence entered combat, and Ethan realized it was a ranged monster. Its only ranged attack was a basic one, where it hurled a slow-moving soul projectile. Its skill attacks, however, were all area of effect abilities centered on itself. The visual effects were terrifying. Countless soul cyclones whirled around the monster, emitting eerie howls. From its emerald green body, torrents of corruption erupted, splattering in all directions. The area of effect attacks range were small, and they didn't affect Ethan at all. He felt a wave of relief. If he had tried to fight this monster in melee, it would have been a nightmare. The 360-degree soul cyclones surrounding it looked deadly, and he doubted even his bare form could withstand a single hit from those gusts. Now all he had to do was dodge the slow-moving soul projectiles it threw. Seeing no immediate danger, Ethan decided to use the weapon skill, Spirit Embodiment, for the first time. After a 3-second cast, 16 skills erupted from him in rapid succession. Solar Flare, Lunar Beam, Stellar Surge, Full Moon Descent, and more skills he didn't even know of spewed forth like a barrage of blue fire from a Gatling gun. -5,942. -7,895. -3,564. -2,564. -15,897. Stellar Surge, a skill equivalent to the owl form's ultimate ability, was something he hadn't even learned yet. and Full Moon Descent and Advanced Skill appeared as well. Although it only triggered once, the damage over 15,000 was absolutely satisfying. The 16 skills slammed into the Death Essence, instantly reducing its health by 20%. Normally, his damage output wasn't this high, but during Spirit Embodiment, even the weakest skill dealt over 2,000 damage. This skill was insane, a 3-second 16-hit burst, and it seemed to ignore level suppression. Finally, after using Spirit Embodiment 3 times, the Death Essence dissipated without a sound. No corpse remained, and the loot dropped directly onto the ground. Ding! You have slain Death Essence. Experience bonus for killing a higher level monster, 4,500%. You have gained 1085, 600 EXP, base EXP, 11,800 plus over-level bonus, 531,000 plus divine ability growth bonus, 542,800. Ding. System notification. Congratulations! You have reached level 43. Ding. System notification. Prismatic Stones Nurturing. Stage 3 Progress. Slay Death Essence. 1/1. Ding. System notification. Congratulations! You have completed Side Quest Prismatic Stones Nurturing. Reward. +2 levels. Ding. System notification. Congratulations! You have reached level 45. A flood of system notifications overwhelmed Ethan. He stared at the screen, stunned. It was over? Just like that? He was already level 45. All the suffering he'd endured over the past few days had paid off. He hadn't expected the side quest to reward him with +2 levels. If only he'd waited until he was at a higher level to complete it, that would have been even better. In Ethereal, side quests were unpredictable. Some clearly stated their rewards, while others gave no hints at all. Rumor had it that the final rewards for these quests were entirely random. Sometimes you might get nothing, but if you were lucky, you could walk away with high-tier gear, weapons, or even divine abilities. A +2 level reward was pretty underwhelming at this stage. These kinds of level-based rewards were more valuable when completed at higher levels. Ethan had been hoping for something more exciting, like a mythical creature or a rare item. Still, reaching level 45 wasn't bad. Morzan had mentioned that once he hit level 45, his real-world abilities would see a significant boost. He hadn't expected to reach this level before going to find Lila. Now it was time to head to Ironvale Mountains. As he walked over to where the Death Essence had dropped its loot, he opened his inventory to sort through his gains. But when he saw what was inside, he froze. Chapter 225. A Second Self. The prismatic stone was still in his inventory. Ethan had assumed it would disappear after completing the quest and receiving the reward. But no, it was still there. He pulled it out to inspect it and was shocked to find that it now had a name and attributes. Second Avatar, Prismatic Stone, Unique, Attribute, used to create a Second Self. Description. The last remaining prismatic stone, forged by the Dwarven King over hundreds of thousands of years. It lacks only the nourishment of life and water to begin the process of soul infusion, transforming it into an immortal, second self. After the upheaval in the Iron Mountains and the Dwarven King's defeat by the Winter Queen, the unfinished prismatic stone was lost. Legend says that whoever completes its nourishment, attunement, and soul infusion will gain the ability to create a second avatar. Ethan stared at the description, completely baffled. A second self? What was this? Activate. Ethan stammered, sending the command to the system. Ding. System notification. You have successfully activated the second avatar. Please assign it a class. A holographic screen popped up in front of him, displaying the familiar character creation interface. Ethan froze for a moment, the screen so large that he thought he'd been kicked out of the game. He moved the screen to the side and confirmed he was still in the game. The character creation interface was indeed floating in front of him. At his feet were 3 glowing items dropped by the Death Essence. He picked them up absent-mindedly, too distracted by the screen to care what they were. His entire focus was on the character creation interface. Wait, did this mean he could have two classes at once? If so, his current druid class already covered offense, defense, and speed. What he lacked were escape skills. His old specialty, the rogue class, would be perfect. This was the third time he'd seen the character creation screen. The first was in his past life, the second was after his rebirth when Morzan had forced him to choose the druid class. Now, with excitement bubbling inside him, Ethan didn't hesitate. He selected rogue. Ding. Player has selected the rogue class. Please confirm. Confirm. Ethan replied quickly. He didn't want Morzan popping up to interfere again. Ding. Class confirmed. Please enter a character name. A character name? Did this mean the second avatar was a separate character? Why else would he need to name it? Dream Shadow. Ethan typed in, using his rogue's name from his past life. Ding. Sorry. The character name Dream Shadow is already taken. Would you like to add symbols or numbers? If not, please enter a new name. No symbols. Ethan snapped. Of course, it was taken. Ethereal had been live for a while now, and two-word names were bound to be common. He tried several more names, but each time the system rejected him. This is impossible, Ethan muttered. New players joining Ethereal now probably spent hours just trying to come up with a name that wasn't taken. 10 minutes later, Ethan was on the verge of a breakdown. He'd tried over 100 names, and every single one was taken. And he was limited to names in his region's language. Finally, out of desperation, he tried something ridiculous. Druid God is my bro. Ding. Sorry, the character name Druid God is my bro is already taken. Would you like to add symbols or numbers? If not, please enter a new name. What the hell? Ethan groaned. He tried again. Druid God is my dad. Ding. Sorry. Character name. Already taken. Druid God is my grandpa. Ding. Sorry. Character name. Already taken. Druid God is my ancestor. Ding. Sorry. Character name. Already taken. Druid God I screw your uncle. Ding. Sorry. Character name. Already taken. Ethan was speechless. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could names like these already be taken? Who in their right mind would choose such ridiculous names? Ethan couldn't believe it. He'd somehow gained a bunch of descendants he never asked for, and the last one, what had he ever done to deserve that? He didn't even know if he had an uncle, but whoever took that name could go ahead and, well, do whatever they wanted. As for the rest, Ethan didn't even want to try. He was pretty sure his entire family tree had been claimed by other players. Who were these people and why were they like this? If he ever found them in-game, he'd make sure they regretted their life choices. After another 10 minutes of frustration, Ethan finally gave up and muttered, "Not a rogue." He fully expected this name to be taken too, but to his surprise, ding, congratulations. Character creation successful. Character name, not a rogue. Ethan was speechless. He wanted to cry. The holographic screen disappeared, and the prismatic stone in his hand began to crack. With a series of crack sounds, the stone slowly split open. Out tumbled a creature wearing nothing but a pair of shorts and sporting a tail. Wait, what? Ethan's jaw dropped. Was that a monkey? A freaking monkey? The prismatic stone had actually spawned a monkey. The creature landed on the ground, curled up in a ball, and then slowly straightened its posture. The movement took only a second, but to Ethan, it felt like watching millions of years of evolution compressed into a single moment. The monkey stood up, transforming from a stone monkey into a fully human player character. It wore the standard newbie outfit, shorts and a wooden sword, and stood there with a blank expression. Ding. System notification. Congratulations! You have obtained a second avatar. Please check the settings in your main character panel. Ethan had assumed the second avatar would allow him to switch to a second class. Instead, it was a separate character that could exist alongside his main one. A druid paired with a rogue. Wasn't this the exact setup he'd envisioned for the Renegade Alliance's enforcement team? Maximum mobility, maximum crowd control. But how was he supposed to control this avatar? Ethan opened his character panel and noticed a new option. Not a druid, main, / not a rogue, avatar. He could switch between the two characters to view their stats. Clicking on the avatar option, he found that the interface was nearly identical to the main character panel, with 3 additional buttons: Manual Control, AI Control Mode, and Idle Mode. Currently, Idle Mode was selected, which explained why the avatar looked so lifeless and dumb. Ethan quickly figured out how it worked. This was essentially a dual control system. Manual control meant he could control both characters simultaneously. AI control mode allowed him to assign tasks to the avatar, which it would then repeat indefinitely. Idle mode was self-explanatory. The avatar would just stand there, staring at him. The avatar could also grind monsters and level up on its own. If it died, it wouldn't lose experience or levels, and it wouldn't drop any equipment. It was essentially an invincible NPC. The experience it gained could be transferred entirely or partially to the main character, and vice versa. The two characters shared experience. As Ethan processed this, a plan began to form in his mind. Chapter 226, Blazing Fortune. After figuring out the avatar's functions, Ethan felt a surge of excitement. Having a second avatar was undeniably powerful, though it did come with one major drawback. The avatar couldn't share his bloodline attributes. This meant it was essentially just a regular player character. Still, he could equip it with gear, teach it skills, and even toss any duplicate divine tier abilities its way if he ever got lucky enough to find more. While sorting through his inventory, Ethan noticed that his teleportation stone was now usable. However, he decided to stay in the area a bit longer. The experience gains here were insane, and the drop rate for skill books from the Scorchbeast Titans was ridiculously high. Leaving without filling his inventory would be a waste. He was still missing a lot of skill books, and his new rogue avatar needed them too. Given his usual bad luck, he knew that once he left this area, farming skill books later would feel like an endless slog. Ethan pulled out the 3 items he'd picked up from the Death Essence, the level 59 elite monster he'd just defeated. As a high-level elite, its drops should be decent, right? In Ethereal, the first kill of any monster always yielded the best loot, thanks to the first kill bonus. After that, the drops returned to normal. The first item was a green orb. Soul Orb of Malevolence. Attribute: feed to a pet to either instantly advance or kill it. Success rate: 50/50ths. Description: can be fed to any pet below legendary tier, regardless of its attributes. If successful, the pet's tier will increase by 1 level. If it fails, the pet will die. Ethan's eyes widened as he read the words, below legendary tier. Did this mean it could upgrade a divine tier pet to legendary tier? That was insane. But then he considered the 50% success rate. If he had a divine tier pet, would he really risk feeding it this thing? It was a gamble. Either the pet ascended to greatness or died on the spot. In the late game, having a divine tier pet could make you a top tier player. A legendary tier pet? Ethan had never even heard of one. But losing a divine tier pet would be catastrophic. He tossed the Soul Orb of Malevolence back into his inventory and moved on to the next item. Random Teleport Scroll, Bundle. Attribute: used to obtain 6 random teleport scrolls. Description: a bundle of teleportation scrolls. Just reading the name made Ethan's heart race. A single random teleport scroll was like an extra life. It could be used even in combat, instantly teleporting the user to a random location within a 10,000-meter radius. Sure, there was a chance you'd just blink in place or end up in the middle of a monster horde, but those outcomes were rare. If you were that unlucky, well, maybe you needed to start doing more good deeds in real life. In his past life, a single random teleport scroll had cost 8,000 gold. This bundle of 6 was worth 48,000 gold, which, if gold prices hadn't dropped, would be over 80 million in real-world cash. Of course, that was years into Ethereal's progression, when the economy had stabilized. Right now, with players still leveling up and gearing up, no one would pay 8,000 gold for a single scroll. Most players would rather die and lose a piece of gear than spend that much on an escape tool. Unless you were carrying something incredibly valuable, Using a random teleport scroll was a luxury only the rich or foolish could afford. In the current market, this bundle of 6 scrolls was probably worth around 4 to 6 million. Ethan's mindset was still adjusting. He'd only been back for a few months after living years in his past life. He tossed the bundle back into his inventory, deciding not to unpack it yet. He needed to save inventory space for the skill books he planned to farm. Unpacking the bundle would mean each random teleport scroll would take up a separate inventory slot, so Ethan decided to leave it as is for now. He moved on to the third item he'd picked up from the Death Essence. It was a necklace, its design striking, a flying flame frozen in midair. As soon as he pulled it out, Ethan felt a sense of déjà vu. When he saw its attributes, he realized why. Blazing necklace. Tier: Gold, upgradable. Requirement: any attribute of 285 or higher. Attack power: 84 to 107. Defense power: 84 to 107. All attributes, plus 50. Effect: lifesteal plus 3%. 3% of damage dealt is converted into health. Set bonus: 3/3 when equipped with Blazing Bracelet and Blazing Necklace. Unlocks the skill Blazing Defense. Skill description: Blazing Defense grants immunity to death once, reduces damage by 20% for 8 seconds, and fully restores health. Cooldown: 3 days. Ha ha ha! Ethan let out a triumphant laugh, loud enough to startle a passing bird, if there was. Finally, the blazing set he'd been waiting for was complete. He hadn't expected the necklace to come with a lifesteal effect. Sure, it was only 3%, but that was still a fantastic bonus. He wasn't surprised by the attribute requirement instead of a level requirement. In Ethereal, equipment above level 45 often required a certain number of attribute points rather than a specific level. If you stacked your stats high enough, you could wear gear far beyond your level. This necklace required 285 points in any attribute, which roughly equated to level 57 gear. Most players distributed their stat points in a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 points into their primary stat, 2 points into secondary stats, and 1 point into the rest. Each level up granted 2 points to all stats, so the primary stat would grow by 5 points per level. Dividing 285 by 5 gave you 57, which was how most players calculated gear requirements. Of course, some players went for extreme builds, dumping 4 or even 5 points into a single stat. This allowed them to equip high-tier gear at lower levels. Another trick was to wear lower-tier gear that boosted specific stats, equip the high-tier item, and then swap back. In Ethereal, once you equipped an item, its stats were locked in. Even if your attributes dropped below the requirement later, the gear wouldn't deactivate. Ethan opened his character panel to check his stats. Not a druid. Class: Druid. Race: Human. Level 45. Faction: Survivors. Bloodline: King of Elves. Divine. Stats: Strength: 425. Growth Index: 22. Increases physical attack power. Intelligence: 425. Growth Index: 22. Increases magical attack power and mana pool. Agility: 425. Growth Index: 22. Increases attack speed, movement speed, and energy regeneration. Stamina: 405. Growth Index: 22. Increases defense. Vitality: 405. Growth Index: 22. Increases health pool. Special attributes: Enhanced. Omni: +5. Mastery: +17. Critical Strike: +16. Haste: +10. Attack power: 2824 to 4056. Base attack: 935 to 935. Plus equipment attack: 1632 to 2752, plus 10%. Defense power: 1737 to 1913. Base defense: 891 to 891. Plus equipment defense: 688 to 848, plus 10%. Health: 8910. Base health: 8910. Plus equipment health: 0. Free stat points 0. General skill. Advanced analysis. Can analyze monsters up to 15 levels higher than yourself. Ethan glanced at his stats and smirked. That's it? Pfft. Without hesitation, he equipped the blazing necklace. A requirement of 285 attribute points? That was nothing to him. Chapter 227. The Heat of Survival. Ethan glanced at his inventory, frowning. No reinforcement stones left. He'd have to wait until he got back to town to upgrade his gear. The blazing set, each piece had a unique effect, and when worn together, it granted a one-time immunity to death. This set was going to be his primary equipment for leveling up, no doubt about it. Blazing necklace. Lifesteal plus 3%. 3% of damage dealt is converted into health. Blazing bracelet. Increases wearer's physical and magical defense by 10%. Blazing ring. Increases wearer's physical and magical attack by 10%. Blazing set bonus. Blazing defense grants immunity to death once, reduces damage by 20% for 8 seconds, and fully restores health. Cooldown, 3 days. This mission had been more than fruitful. Not only had he gained a second avatar, but he'd also scored over a dozen skill books, a pack of random teleport scrolls, and now the complete blazing set. He was swimming in loot. Checking the system logs, Ethan looked up the last reported location of the divine ability scroll, Fatal Strike. The holder, Littlehorn, was still on the run. Every 10 minutes, the coordinates updated, and Littlehorn was never in the same place twice. Ethan's mind drifted back to his past life. When he'd obtained the divine ability, Fatal Strike, it wasn't because of some powerful backing or because he'd outrun the entire server's pursuit. No, he'd been a solo player back then, no guild, no allies, just pure skill and a lot of luck. In fact, even if Littlehorn had joined a guild, Ethan doubted it would have helped. The greed for a divine ability scroll was insatiable. Any guild leader with half a conscience would have kicked him out and hunted him down themselves. Some might even lure him into a trap, only to backstab him later. Ethan remembered how Littlehorn had managed to hold onto the scroll until the ownership timer ran out. He'd been forced into a narrow crevice in a mountain, hiding there until the very end. That was how he'd secured the scroll. From what Ethan had heard, before founding Hand of God, Littlehorn had bounced between countless guilds. But his blunt personality and refusal to back down from injustice had made him enemies with many guild leaders. Eventually, he became a true solo player, a lone gunslinger with a vibe straight out of a Wild West movie. Ethan recalled the first time he'd seen Littlehorn. It was from a distance, but the image was unforgettable. Littlehorn's avatar was decked out in a Mexican-style wide-brimmed hat, a Colt revolver at his hip, and a Winchester rifle slung over his shoulder. He wore a denim jacket, cowboy boots with spurs, and a colorful bandana around his neck. He looked like he'd ridden straight out of an old Western film. Ethan had been in an abandoned mine when he heard the thunder of hooves. Peeking out, he saw Littlehorn leading Hand of God from the southern frontier to the northern frontier, rushing to defend against an invasion from Russia. The sight of Littlehorn on horseback, commanding an army, had left Ethan in awe, but that awe was short-lived. Ethan had turned back to the mine, focused on his own goal, mining titanite. The last time he'd seen Littlehorn was just before his rebirth, when he'd been gathering his 998th piece of titanite. Littlehorn had been alone again, a shadow of his former self, wandering the southern frontier. It was after Zachary had betrayed and slaughtered the top players of Dragonspire. Dragonspire had been defeated, the United States' chance to compete with other nations lost. Littlehorn, disheartened, stepped down as guild leader of Hand of God and returned to being a lone ranger. That day, Ethan, dressed in tattered gear, was being chased by a horde of monsters when the legendary man appeared. After saving Ethan, Littlehorn realized he was Dream Shadow, and his reaction was one of genuine surprise. Back in the early days of Ethereal, Ethan had been a legend, his exploits known across all regions. Littlehorn had even been a fan of his. At the time, Ethan had been a lone ranger, just like Littlehorn was now, fighting injustice wherever he found it. Littlehorn's preference for solitude had been influenced by Ethan's example. He'd even regretted not choosing the rogue class back then, wishing he could have mirrored Ethan's style. Littlehorn had pulled Ethan aside, setting up chairs, a table, and even a sunshade in the middle of nowhere. They'd shared drinks and stories, bonding over their shared experiences. Ethan couldn't help but notice that, even as a solo player, Littlehorn was still living large. As the former leader of Hand of God, he wasn't exactly hurting for resources. They talked for hours and Ethan shared his own story. Both men sighed, realizing they'd been betrayed by the same person. Before the betrayal, no one in Dragonspire had suspected that Zachary was actually a spy from Serpent Isle. Despite being born into the Steel Consortium, a century-old institution in the U.S., Zachary had turned traitor, even betraying his own father. Before they parted ways, Littlehorn escorted Ethan to the abandoned mine where he was searching for his final piece of titanite. As they said goodbye, Littlehorn told Ethan that one day, they'd ride together through Ethereal, righting wrongs as a team. Ethan could only smile wryly, thinking to himself, this guy really has a hero complex. Now, as Ethan reflected on those memories, he wondered if he should share the coordinates of that mountain crevice with Littlehorn. He remembered the spot well. It had become a pilgrimage site for many players, including himself. He'd even visited once, just to see the place that had birthed a legend. The cave was narrow, barely wide enough for one person to crawl through. It sloped upward for about 200 meters before reaching a small alcove where someone could lie flat. The narrowness of the cave made it nearly impossible to attack while crawling. Players couldn't wield weapons or cast spells until they reached the alcove, where the space opened up enough to move freely. Even then, larger weapons like shields were useless. No shield tank could crawl in with their shield equipped. Littlehorn had been forced into this cave, turning what seemed like a dead end into an impregnable fortress. As a gunner, his precision shooting made him nearly invincible. Anyone trying to crawl in would be met with a bullet to the head. Only a shield tank might have stood a chance, but without their shield, they were as vulnerable as any other class. Some players had tried smoking him out, bringing in engineering smoke machines, but Littlehorn was stubborn. He endured the discomfort, refusing to leave. In the real world, he would have succumbed to carbon dioxide poisoning, but this was ethereal. Others considered poisoning him, but in ethereal, toxins required a medium to take effect. The upward slope of the cave made it impossible to flood, and there were no volatile gases in the game. The plan failed. Chapter 228, Zovel's Attention. Ethan opened his friend list, frowning as he saw that every single name was grayed out. What was going on? Skyblade, Slashblade, Seraph Warrior. All of them were offline. He tried adding Littlehorn as a friend. Ding. System alert. Current map is a restricted zone. System functions unavailable. So that was the issue. The map restrictions explained why no one had sent him any messages over the past few days. Use external communication to call Victor. Ethan commanded the ethereal system. Ding. System alert. Current map is a restricted zone. System functions unavailable. Ugh. Even external communication was blocked. Fine, he'd just grind some monsters. He led his second avatar to the spawn point of the Scorchbeast Titans. Positioning the avatar in a safe spot, Ethan set the system to allocate all experience from kills to the avatar. He started by casting Owl Form to apply debuffs, then activated Spirit Embodiment, unleashing a barrage of 16 rapid attacks that flew out like bullets from a Gatling gun. Rat-tat-tat. The Scorchbeast Titan's health bar dropped significantly. Ethan took down the first one before the cooldown on Spirit Embodiment had even reset. This was much faster than his previous kill times. Ding. Kill confirmed. Scorchbeast Titan. Overleveled kill bonus. 1,500%. Experience gained. 176,000. Base experience. 5,500.
Overleveled bonus. 82,500.
Divine ability bonus. 88,000. Ding. System alert. 100% of experience from this kill has been shared with your avatar. Not a rogue. Ding. System alert. Congratulations. Your avatar, not a rogue, has leveled up to level 2. Ding. System alert. Congratulations. Your avatar, not a rogue, has leveled up to level 3. Golden light flashed repeatedly as the avatar shot up 10 levels in seconds. Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. Back when he'd leveled his main character to 10, it had taken him days. Now, thanks to the Divine Ability Experience bonus, all that extra experience was being funneled directly into his avatar. 1, 2, 3. Ethan kept taking down Scorchbeast Titans, and the avatar kept leveling up. By the time he killed the 10th one, ding. System alert. Your rampant killing of Zovel's minions in the Soulforge Abyss has drawn his attention. Huh? Who or what was Zovel? Ethan froze, immediately activating stealth. He scanned his surroundings carefully, but after a few moments, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Still, he knew the system wouldn't give a meaningless alert. This Zovel was likely a high-tier NPC or monster, something formidable. In Ethereal, any NPC with a unique name was a force to be reckoned with. After a while, when nothing happened, Ethan cautiously resumed grinding. He took down a few more Scorchbeast Titans, but everything seemed normal. He'd gotten into a rhythm, his movements almost automatic as he mastered the monster's patterns. Then, out of nowhere, a massive white orb appeared in the sky. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The orb materialized instantly and hurtled toward him at an alarming speed. Even if he activated the Swift Stride skill on his boots, there was no way he could escape its radius in time. Gritting his teeth, Ethan activated bear form. As a druid, transforming into a bear increased his agility, boosting his dodge chance, while his defense skyrocketed by 300% and his stamina by 350%. The transformation also made him immune to polymorph effects and granted access to a suite of bear-specific abilities. Best of all, it removed all movement-impairing effects. After equipping the Blazing Necklace, all his stats increased by 50 points. His health pool now maxed out at 10010. In bear form, the 350% health boost sent his HP soaring to 35035. His defense, previously ranging from 1,858 to 2034, now jumped to a staggering 5,574 to 6,102. Boom! The magical orb slammed into him. Minus 35,033. Ethan's mind reeled as the damage number flashed. He quickly tried to move, but before he could, chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around him and locking him in place. With 475 agility, his movement speed was normally 195%, and that was without panther form. But the chains reduced his speed to a pitiful 25%. His massive bear form lumbered awkwardly, slowed to a crawl. With only 2 HP left, even the simple act of pulling out a potion felt like it took an eternity. Though the initial orb attack had ended, the Scorchbeast Titan he'd been fighting wasn't done. It swung its massive arms, chains whipping through the air as it prepared to unleash a cleaving tempest. Ethan shifted into panther form and activated the Swift Stride skill on his boots. Whoosh! His speed surged and he darted out of the attack range just in time. Phew! Ethan exhaled in relief. Thank the gods druid transformations could remove movement-impairing effects. Unfortunately, the attack speed debuff remained. He sprinted away, but the chains seemed to stretch infinitely. He tossed a medium instant health potion into his mouth. Plus 8,000. His health bar shot back up. Realizing the chains couldn't be broken by distance, Ethan circled back to their source. He noticed the shackles had health bars. Swiping with his claws, he destroyed them one by one, finally freeing himself. The Scorchbeast Titan was almost dead. Ethan didn't want to let it reset. That would mean all his effort was wasted. He shifted into owl form and unleashed Spirit Embodiment, firing off a barrage of 16 attacks. Skills like Solar Flare, Lunar Beam, Stellar Surge, and Full Moon Descent erupted from him. The goofy-looking owl became a machine gun, spewing blue flames. Minus 7,895. Minus 5,942. minus 15,897, minus 2,564, minus 3,564. A flurry of damage numbers filled the air. Ding. Kill confirmed. Scorchbeast Titan. Ethan rushed forward to loot the corpse, then immediately shifted back into panther form and bolted, his avatar following close behind. Above him, the swirling vortex in the sky flickered, and another faint orb began to form. If he didn't get out of there now, he might not get another chance. He'd checked the combat log earlier. The attack was called Soul Surge, and the description was chilling. You have drawn the attention of Zovel. He has ordered periodic map-wide AoE attacks using Soul Surge. What the hell is this Zovel guy? Ethan muttered under his breath. Chapter 229. The Watchful Eye. This time, Ethan paid close attention as Soul Surge formed. The last attack had caught him off guard, but now he watched the entire process. The orb descended. Ethan shifted into travel form, his movement speed skyrocketing to 290%. He bolted out of the attack range just in time. Boom! The orb hit the ground and dissolved into it. Ethan stopped and turned to look. The skill was terrifying. Even with Bear Form's 35,000 HP, he'd barely survived the last hit. If he took another, he wasn't sure he'd make it. Defense had upper and lower limits, and there was no guarantee the next hit would trigger his higher defense stat. He stared at the spot where the orb had vanished, then glanced up at the swirling vortex in the sky. Is this because I've been killing too many monsters here? He muttered. Am I being targeted? It seemed he couldn't stay any longer. The skill came down too fast, and its area of effect was massive. Only Panther Form with Swift Stride or Travel Form Speed Boost could outrun it. Ethan gritted his teeth. Forget it. I've already made a killing here. No need to push my luck. He activated a teleportation stone. After a 20-second cast time, Ethan vanished from the Soulforge abyss. As the screen faded to black, he suddenly remembered. His avatar was still there. Oh crap! The map changed, and Ethan reappeared at the teleportation hub in Harmony City. He quickly opened the avatar control panel, just as a system notification chimed. Ding! Detected that your character has reached level 45. The King of Elves Bloodline has been upgraded to level 2. Phew! That was close. The avatar control panel, which previously had 3 buttons, now had 4. A new Summon Avatar button had appeared. This button only showed up when the avatar was too far from the main body. Without hesitation, Ethan pressed it. Ding! System alert. Your avatar has died. The Summon Avatar button instantly changed to Resurrect Avatar. Ding! System alert. Resurrecting your avatar will place it in a weakened state for 3 hours. Proceed. Yes, Ethan replied reluctantly. What could have killed his avatar? There hadn't been any monsters near its last location. What Ethan didn't know was that the moment he teleported out, the swirling vortex in the Soulforge abyss transformed into a massive, blood-red eye. A low, resonant voice echoed through the void. Since the creation of this realm, even I have been trapped here. Yet he can use teleportation? In this world of damned souls, for countless millennia, no living being has ever set foot here. I was going to... There's another one? Well, no more games. As the voice faded, a gray beam shot down from the eye, instantly obliterating Ethan's rogue avatar. The avatar's corpse vanished without a trace. Ha! The voice seemed puzzled by the disappearing body. After a moment, it murmured, No wonder. This aura. Could it be? That old fool is still alive? How interesting. The blood-red eye vanished, and the Soulforge abyss returned to its eerie silence. If Ethan had known someone, or something had been secretly watching him, he might have felt differently. But for now, after resurrecting his avatar, he turned his attention to the notification about his King of Elves Bloodline upgrade. Ethan opened his Bloodline panel. Bloodline. King of Elves. Divine. Unique. Level 2. Special trait. In human form, you can use certain druid form abilities at 30% effectiveness. Not activated. Bloodline passive. Plus 10-star growth to all attributes. Bloodline abilities, stacks with player abilities. Focus, divine. Skill effectiveness increased by 50%. Apocalypse, divine. Gain plus 10 stat points per level. Growth, divine. Experience gained from kills and quests increased by 100%. Fatal strike, divine. Critical hits have a chance to deal 5x critical damage. Description. The peace-loving elven race has left an indelible mark on every recorded holy war. Though they cherish tranquility, their valor in battle is unparalleled. Holy crap! Ethan blinked at the screen, then rubbed his eyes as if that would change what he was seeing. The teleportation hub was crowded, and Ethan's sudden outburst startled the players around him. "What the hell, man? You scared the crap out of me?" one player snapped, glaring at Ethan. Others nearby also shot him annoyed looks. Ethan barely registered the complaint. His mind was entirely focused on the upgrade to his divine bloodline. He quickly left the hub and headed straight for his shop. The King of Elves bloodline had reached level 2, and it had unlocked a new divine ability. Fatal Strike, divine. In the southern frontier region, the war over the divine ability scroll had been raging for nearly 4 days. Countless players had lost levels and gear in the chaos. And here he was unlocking one directly. Inasmuch as it was surprising, it was also beyond satisfying. Even the special trait had improved, now allowing him to use game skills in the real world with 10% more effectiveness. Reaching level 45 had brought massive upgrades. Still buzzing with excitement, Ethan opened the death log to check the damage that had killed his avatar. He discovered that his rogue avatar had been one-shot by a skill called Destruction Gaze. Minus 165,249. Ethan had never seen damage that high before. A chill ran down his spine. Thank God I got out of there in time. Otherwise, I'd have been obliterated without a doubt. Ding. Global notification. The holder of the Divine Ability Scroll, Fatal Strike, Divine, Little Horn, is currently at coordinates 26489.3659, 1.81546. Hold time 4 hours 20 minutes 0 seconds. If the holder maintains possession for 12 hours, they will gain permanent ownership of the scroll. Seeing the system notification, Ethan's lips curled into a grin. They're still going at it, huh? Meanwhile, for some reason I just got this exact same divine ability effortlessly. How ironic and coincidental. He happily opened the friends list. All his previously offline friends were now showing as active. Hope you haven't set your account to reject all friend requests, Ethan thought. Add friend. Little Horn. Ding. System notification. Your friend request to Little Horn has been denied. Ethan shook his head. Ah well, hope you still have some good luck this time around. Just as he was about to close the friends list, another notification popped up. Ding. System notification. Little Horn has sent you a friend request. Accept/decline. It was him adding Ethan back. So, the earlier rejection had been manual. Probably, after picking up the scroll, Little Horn had been bombarded with friend requests and had reflexively hit deny on all of them. Then, after seeing Ethan's name, he decided to add him back. Ethan had set his account to reject all friend requests by default, but since he'd initiated the ad earlier, Little Horn had been added to his whitelist. Druid God. Little Horn messaged after the request was accepted. If you trust me, go to coordinates 69846.3625, 9.15695. Ethan replied without hesitation. There's a cave there. Climb to the very back. Set up your sniper rifle, and you'll be able to secure the divine ability. Oh, and before you go, get a trusted friend to bring you extra ammo. Bring a repair hammer too. Ethan didn't waste time, sending 3 messages in quick succession. Little Horn, why are you helping me, bro? Ethan didn't respond further. Sometimes saying too much could backfire. Chapter 230. Skill Book Distribution. Ethan moved on his way to the auction house, planning to grab some gear for his rogue alt. Just as he was about to start browsing, a message popped up from Skyblade. Skyblade, Ethan, you're finally online. Where are you? Ethan quickly replied, at home. Don't worry, I'm fine. I got stuck in a special zone, locked out of everything. He figured it was because he'd entered that unique map which had cut off all his systems. External calls couldn't get through either, so Leo and the others must have thought he'd gone AWOL. As soon as he teleported back, his comms lit up with dozens of missed calls. Skyblade, oh, by the way, while you were gone, we took down Marcus Skaner. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh? How'd that go? Skyblade eagerly launched into the story, and Ethan couldn't help but laugh. Meatball's curse had been absolutely brutal. Anyway, Ethan said, gather the crew and meet me at the guild hall later. I've got a bunch of high-tier skill books to hand out. Got it. With that, Ethan headed to the auction house to pick up some gear for his rogue. After equipping the alt, he checked the auction house's earnings over the past few days. The total came to a whopping 900 gold coins. That was the combined income from all 3 auction houses in the major cities. The auction houses were now fully operational, and items listed in one could be purchased from any of the 3. Once a buyer made a purchase, the system would automatically mail the item to them. Of course, this seamless integration only worked for auction houses under the same franchise. Independent shops couldn't share inventory, but the profits from all the shops could be managed from any of their terminals. Ethan's shops were thriving. In just 3 or 4 days, the net profit had soared to over 3,000 gold coins. Employee wages were automatically calculated and paid by the system based on the contract signed during hiring. Even the city lord of Harmony City took his cut without Ethan needing to lift a finger. Running a business in the game was far simpler than in real life. After wrapping up his tasks, Ethan pulled out the reinforcement stones he'd just bought and immediately upgraded his blazing necklace to plus 30. His stats got a nice boost, and feeling confident, he decided to go all out. He returned to the auction house, bought a stack of reinforcement stones, and upgraded all the gear he'd bought for his rogue to plus 30 as well. The gear he'd picked up for the rogue was a mix of common iron and silver tier items, all suitable for levels 17 to 18. He didn't care much about the stats. If it was cheap and available, he grabbed it. And when it came to reinforcement, he didn't hold back. With his resources, he could afford to go all in. Reinforcing gear to plus 30 multiplied its base attack or defense by 10, then added the original stats. Even the most mediocre piece of equipment could become a top-tier item with that kind of upgrade. Once the rogue was fully geared, Ethan expanded its inventory and stocked it up with potions and supplies. He made sure the alt had everything his main character had, just in case. Then a thought struck him. What if he gave the rogue the Wishbound relic? The relic's description read, drops on death, cannot be traded, cannot be stored, cannot be destroyed. But the rogue's unique trait was that it didn't drop items on death. If the rogue held the relic, it would essentially bind the item to the alt, making it impossible to lose. That would free Ethan from the fear of losing the relic if he died. Once the rogue's cooldown period was over, he'd find a safe spot to test the theory. If this worked, it would be a game changer. After gearing up his rogue alt and setting it to idle, Ethan made his way to the guild hall. By the time he arrived, the crew was already there waiting for him. Slashblade, Skyblade, Seraph Warrior, and Meatball. Without a word, Ethan pulled out a stack of skill books and tossed them onto the table with a flourish. Go ahead. Pick what you want. The 4 of them stared at the pile of skill books on the table. Even though they were seasoned players who'd seen their fair share of rare loot, their eyes widened in shock. The advanced warrior skills alone were enough to make anyone drool. Embodiment of the Titans, Bladestorm, Powerful Counter, Wrath Control, Explosive Lightning, and more. It was practically a warrior's dream come true. Skyblade couldn't help himself. He immediately grabbed Embodiment of the Titans, and, before anyone could say a word, slapped the book in his hands, causing it to dissolve into a shimmering mist as he absorbed the skill. Leo, what the hell? Seraph Warrior glared at him, clearly annoyed. What? Skyblade asked, genuinely confused. What do you mean, what? Do you even know how much embodiment of the Titans is worth? With a skill like that, we could have gotten a professional warrior to sign a contract and work for us. And you just learned it? Are you serious? Ever since you became the main tank, you've been acting like some uncultured bull. Skyblade's face turned red, but before he could retort, Seraph Warrior snatched up 3 paladin skill books. Seraph, Vengeful Wrath, and Advanced, Crusade, Vengeful Wrath. With a quick motion, he absorbed all 3 in one go. Seraph Warrior didn't stop there. He continued to berate Skyblade, who was now visibly fuming, especially after the uncultured bull comment. To make matters worse, Seraph Warrior then grabbed 2 more skill books, each as valuable as Embodiment of the Titans, including an advanced version of Vengeful Wrath. Advanced skills were several times more expensive than their basic counterparts. You shameless! Skyblade stammered, his voice trembling with anger. Even Ethan raised an eyebrow. Since when had Seraph Warrior become so bold? Slashblade, meanwhile, was trying hard not to laugh, his hand covering his mouth as he stifled a chuckle. Leo, I can't blame him for calling you out. You're learning a DPS skill as a tank? That's just low. As he spoke, Slashblade picked up Hymn of the Divine and absorbed it without hesitation. Skyblade was left speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Meatball, who had been quiet, stepped forward and picked up Void Portal. He turned to Skyblade, opened his mouth as if to say something, but Skyblade cut him off. Don't you start. You're the last person who should be talking. You're always the one pulling aggro. You guys are all hard. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions, just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.